Police Scotland is now warning that full away allocations at Ibrox might not be workable after Sunday's chaos. Celtic are monitoring a Polish Wonderkid for a summer move, and shocking new footage has emerged showing exactly what happened to Julian Araujo in the Ibrox pitch invasion. It's been another dramatic day in Celtic news, but first make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel for more Celtic content. Police Scotland's Greater Glasgow Chief Superintendent Emma Croft has raised serious concerns about the future of full away allocations after Celtic's Scottish Cup win over Rangers at Ibrox. The match itself was tight and tense. Celtic spent long spells defending their penalty box before holding their nerve in the shootout. Tomas Kvankara scored the winning penalty and sent the travelling support into wild celebration. For many watching, the noise from the Broomloan stand felt like the return of a proper derby atmosphere. Around 8,000 Celtic supporters made the trip across the city. The sound rarely dropped, even when Rangers pushed Celtic deep during the second half and extra time. The scenes at the end have sparked another conversation about whether full away allocations can continue. Supporters entered the pitch after the shootout, and police stepped in to restore order. Investigations are now underway. Croft addressed the situation as authorities reviewed what unfolded after the final whistle. Her comments focused on the behaviour of a minority and the policing response on the day. At the same time, the wider question remains whether reducing travelling support actually improves the fixture inside the stadium. For many supporters, the argument is simple. Derby matches are shaped by rivalry and atmosphere. A packed away section changes the game. Celtic's players could hear supporters throughout the afternoon at Ibrox. That backing mattered when Rangers controlled long stretches of possession. She said, "I'm very frustrated and disappointed, if I'm being quite frank. Why a football match which should be celebrated by many ended up in the position it did yesterday. What we saw post the result of the penalties was euphoria from one side and reaction from another. What we saw was an overspilling of emotion that had been pent up probably for the last few weeks from both groups who were hell-bent on trying to reach each other. We're at 9 arrests currently for those incidents that have been well reported already, and I expect that number to rise. We're at 9 currently for those incidents that have been well reported already, including 3 outside the stadium and the rest within the stadium. But I expect that number to rise as and when we establish what we've got. I've got around 20 crime reports already which we're acting on currently, and I expect that number to grow. Our starting position is that number of away fans is not workable currently. Football in Scotland has always carried enormous passion. When Celtic and Rangers meet, that feeling rises again. It has been part of the fixture for generations, and it will not disappear. What can change is how the day is managed. Entry points matter, stewarding matters, planning matters. Those are the areas that can be tightened if lessons need to be learned from what happened at Ibrox. Now for the main story, as Celtic are continuing to monitor Sturm Graz midfielder Filip Rozga, with the Polish youngster emerging as a possible summer target. According to Daily Record journalist Scott Burns, the Hoops first showed interest in the 19-year-old during the January transfer window. At that stage, however, Sturm Graz had little appetite to sell. The Austrian club had only signed Rozga from Polish side Cracovia the previous summer for around £1.75 million and were not prepared to move him on so quickly. Instead, Celtic kept watching. The club's scouting team have continued to follow Rozga closely, and a fresh attempt to bring him to Glasgow could arrive once the summer window opens. The midfielder also caught the eye when Sturm Graz faced Celtic in the Europa League earlier in the season. In the match at Celtic Park, Rozga assisted his side's goal during a 2-1 defeat. It was a small moment in the game, but it offered Celtic staff a close look at how he performs against a team that plays at a higher tempo. Rozga is still early in his career, but he is already gaining attention beyond Austria. He has made 2 senior appearances for Poland and is widely viewed as one of the country's promising young players. On the pitch, he offers flexibility. His natural position sits behind the striker as an attacking midfielder, though he has also been used out wide. Sturm Graz have even deployed him further forward when they need movement around the penalty area. His first season in Austria has brought regular football. Rozga has made 28 appearances so far and scored twice while Sturm Graz push for the league title. Celtic's January business focused on short-term deals. Several players arrived on loan, and some of those moves include options to buy once the season ends. That approach left room for the club to plan more carefully for the summer. Recruitment work is already underway. Within those discussions, Rozga's name reportedly continues to come up as a player Celtic would like to bring in once the window opens again. In other news, Alistair Johnston has offered a small but encouraging glimpse into his recovery as the Celtic defender works his way back from injury. The Canadian fullback posted a short video on Instagram showing himself running at Lennoxtown. The clip shows Johnston moving freely on the training pitches as he continues building fitness after months on the sidelines. Johnston captioned the post simply, 2026 up and running. The message was brief, but the footage itself told a clearer story. For the first time in a while, the right back looked to be stepping up the physical side of his rehabilitation. The defender has been out since suffering a hamstring injury earlier in the season. Celtic have had to rotate the right back role during that period while Johnston worked through recovery. Celtic manager Martin O'Neill recently gave an update on Johnston's situation when asked about injured players in the squad. The manager explained that the defender had experienced a couple of small setbacks in recovery. Nothing serious, but enough to slow the process. O'Neill suggested the most realistic return could come later in the campaign around the Premiership split. That would allow Johnston time to rebuild sharpness before returning to competitive matches. The video from Lennoxtown suggests the next stage of that process is underway. Running work usually follows the early rehabilitation phases when players begin testing the injured muscle under controlled conditions. Johnston's absence has been felt on the right side of the pitch. His game relies on constant movement up and down the flank. Celtic often use him to stretch the pitch and deliver early crosses when the attack moves wide. As good as Loney Julian Araujo has been in that role, Johnston's attacking threat and link-up play have still been missed. The Canadian often builds quick combinations with the winger ahead of him before driving into space down the line. The prospect of both players being available during the Premiership split would give Celtic real depth in that position. For now, the Instagram post simply shows progress rather than a return date. But seeing Johnston back running at Lennoxtown is a step forward as Celtic move deeper into the final months of the season. Lastly, new fan footage from Ibrox appears to show just how ugly Sunday's post-match chaos became, and Celtic should not let anyone smooth it over with a lazy both sides argument. The clip, now circulating online, appears to show a Rangers supporter running at Celtic defender Julian Araujo at full time and trying to kick him. Araujo steps away, the swipe misses, and other Rangers fans are nearby as the scene turns ugly. It is not an isolated clip. It sits alongside wider reporting from the aftermath of Celtic's Scottish Cup penalty shootout win, when multiple outlets described Rangers supporters coming onto the pitch with far more than simple frustration in the mix after their team lost to Celtic on penalties. STV reported that after dozens of Celtic fans spilled onto the pitch in celebration, this then triggered an invasion from hundreds of Rangers supporters at the opposite end, with stewarding breached. Nobody sensible is arguing that pitch invasions should be treated as normal. They are not allowed, and Celtic fans who ran on in celebration should not have done it. But football has seen that kind of emotional overflow plenty of times, supporters getting carried away after a major result. What came next from the Rangers' end was of a different order. Police Scotland called the disorder shameful and said officers and stewards were met with extreme hostility and violence over a sustained period. They also said many involved had armed themselves with items clearly intended to cause harm. That's all the latest Celtic news for today. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and drop a comment below with your thoughts. I'll see you in the next one. Hail, hail.